The National Football League is always about turning the page, but it's also about celebrating unusual accomplishments. On this episode of Defending the Kingdom, we will take a really close look at the 64th team of the Kansas City Chiefs franchise, the Super Bowl LVIII champions, a team set apart forever. It's all brought to you by Ticketmaster. Remember, awesome off-season concerts at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium and other events. Make sure you check it out at Ticketmaster.com.
McKinnon is in at running back. First down and goal to go. Play action fake. Right side throw. Touchdown! Kansas City! McCole Hardman with the catch on the right side. A 3-yard touchdown pass in overtime.
And hi, everyone. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen, fresh off his trip to the Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana. And before we do anything, before we jump into this remarkable 64th team of franchise history, a team that set NFL history in many ways, we do want to remember those who are still hurting. The loss of life, the Galvan family that lost Lisa in the episode that happened after the parade and the shootings, those who are still recovering, the families who were involved, our thoughts and prayers are with you all in the Chiefs Kingdom. It was a surreal moment, but our hearts are empathetic and sympathetic to those who had loss, and we don't want to move on without acknowledging that.
Just so tragically sad. I mean, what can you say about it? Just horribly, horribly sad. But no surprise, Kansas City, Chiefs Kingdom, everyone in this community has rallied around that family and rallied around what happened. And that's all you can do in times like this is heal together, right?
Yep. And a special reach out to the Hispanic community of the Chiefs Kingdom. And I saw, the folks from Tico Productions when we had the revealing the reimagining of GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium, and saw many of them. And, of course, that got very close to them. So, yeah, hearts out to those folks. But we want to have this episode to talk about one of the more remarkable teams, not just in franchise history, but in National Football League history, because what the 2023 Chiefs did during the regular season and then in the 2024 calendar year to start to win Super Bowl LVIII is something that will be talked about forever in many ways. But this is a remarkable team, and you've got the Super Bowl hats out in your hat collection. So
had to, right? Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk all about this team. It's funny because this time of year, like Mitch said, I just got back from the Combine. It's all about selling hope to the other 31 franchises. It's all about who are we going to draft? How are we going to get to the Super Bowl the next year? And yeah, we're going to talk about the draft over the next several months. We're going to talk about how this team will look in 2024. But the whole point of playing football is to win the Super Bowl. And the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl for a second straight year. We're living in the good old days right now. And I have a whole bunch of numbers we'll dive into later about just how special this particular run is. But technically, the team has to turn the page. Brett Veach, Coach Reed, they have a lot of work to do to work on next year's team, but we don't have to turn the page just yet. We're going to celebrate this one for a while.
Let me give you some, and this is, I said, forever. Think of the number 4 here. All right. You mentioned Andy Reid, the 4th winningest coach in National Football League history. This was the 4th Super Bowl championship for the Kansas City Chiefs franchise. They came from behind 4 times in Super Bowl LVIII. That was an NFL record. Only 4 teams have more Super Bowl titles now than the Chiefs. They are the 4th team in NFL history to win a Super Bowl with a 6-loss regular season. This was the 4th title, as I mentioned. That's more than any of the other of the 4 teams in the AFC West. The Chiefs are number 1 now, and the other 3 are lagging behind. Harrison Butker, remarkable. Ties an all-time Super Bowl record with 4 made field goals. Number 4, Rashee Rice, has 196 yards after the catch in the NFL postseason. That set an all-time NFL rookie postseason record. And you alluded to it, back-to-back victories. And I mentioned it at the end of the broadcast of Super Bowl LVIII, the first time that a team has won back-to-back championships in the Super Bowl in 6,944 days. This is a team that will be remembered forever. But I know you're going to go around the world.
Yeah, we'll go around the world. I have another 4 for you that I can't take credit for. It was Kelsey Tien in our social department, one of our social media people. She mentioned it to us. This is hilarious. So we have now won the Super Bowl 4 years apart in leap years. So it's 2024 right now. I know technically it's a 2023 season, but 2024 is a leap year. We're actually filming this on February 29th. We also won the Super Bowl in 2019/2020, and the February of 2020 was, I guess, a leap year. So Kelsey coming up with the super advanced analytics. We are winning
So the last
Super Bowls.
2 leap years, we've won Super Bowls.
When people are celebrating February 29th, the Chiefs are world champions. I also have 4 around the worlds for you. We got a lot of submissions, and we have all off season. I'll get to everybody, I promise, but I have 4 for you right now. So I went to the driving range the other day. I'm not a big golfer, but Ellie wanted to go, so we went to the driving range, and I met Jeremy at the golf bar. And Jeremy came up and said hi. So shout out to you, Jeremy. Thanks for listening. I was at your stomping grounds, Hy-Vee, recently, doing some grocery shopping, and I met Chase. Chase came up and said hi. Shout out to you, Chase.
You can't go anywhere anymore. You just it's got to drive Ellie crazy that you just can't go anywhere without getting stopped and hey.
No, that is your life right there, because we were talking about how Mitch wants to go to the Combine at some point, and I was like, I mean, we can go, but you're going to be sucked into the vortex of every single media outlet wants to talk to the voice of the Chiefs. We need to go next year, though. I think you'd enjoy it.
I want to go.
2 more. Shout out to Mario, Carla, Gustavo, and Vicente, all part of the same family, from Riverside, California. Thank you for listening. And then shout out to William from Albia, Iowa. Ever been to Albia, Iowa? I'm probably mispronouncing that.
And I'm still stung by not knowing where was it, Seymour, Missouri, or whatever.
Wow.
I'm still
I have some good news for you. I did some research. So a lot of our listeners let us know where Seymour is.
Okay.
They were nice to you.
You knew that was coming. You knew that was coming.
You were laying in bed at night thinking, I can't believe
I blew it. I think it's Seymour, Indiana, home of John Cougar Mellencamp.
So Seymour is just east of Springfield.
Okay.
Not far at all from Springfield. It is the home of the Seymour Tigers. Add that to the data bank, okay?
There's a lot of tigers in Missouri, as you might guess.
Yeah.
A lot of tigers. Almost too many. I need to petition some of these schools to, figure something out.
It's a different logo, though. They didn't. You know how some high schools will just use
Mizzou's
K-State's logo or
right,
Mizzou's logo? Yeah, it's a different logo. I'll give them credit for that. Also, I realized that.
And by the way, Patrick Mahomes High School uses the K-State logo.
You're kidding.
No, I said, dude. He goes, I know.
That's funny.
Yeah.
We never followed up on the trivia question we gave everyone during our first episode in Vegas, where we asked who the switcheroo was, the Niner to the Chiefs and the Chiefs to the Niner.
We never answered that?
We never did. We got a lot of answers, and people are probably wondering. It was Travarius Ward and Richie James. Travarius Ward, Richie James. I think Jerick McKinnon was technically on the Niners, but he didn't play because he was injured. Yeah. So if you answered Jerick, you're not incorrect, but the answers we were looking for.
But he didn't go to
Ward,
Middle Tennessee State. He went to Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
And so the fact that both of those guys, Travarius Ward and Richie James Jr., went to Middle Tennessee State, just makes it way too crazy.
2 Blue Raiders who were on opposite teams in Super Bowl 54 and then opposite teams in Super Bowl 58. Yeah.
And your grandma, an esteemed former
Professor.
faculty member at Middle Tennessee State. So in this episode, we're going to look back and separate and just talk. We're moving on, but not in this episode. You cannot move on without understanding and going a deep dive into the 2023 Chiefs 2024 playoffs. We're going to look at 4 different areas, not surprising, about this team and how it's truly remarkable and in many ways set apart from any NFL team in history, especially in the Super Bowl era. And the first is the dynamics of how this kind of happened. And it talks about the infrastructure, or it is an example of the infrastructure of the Chiefs' kingdom, but how it works on a 365-day basis. One of the things I really liked about this past year, there was never talk about back-to-back. Now, we're not going to be able to avoid it this next year because it'll be external. It's never happened of going back to back to back. That's another episode. But this year's team was united. That was the battle cry, and it truly was when you look at what happened. But this team was set up to build a seaworthy ship for the rocky seas. When you look at what they did in getting Drew Tranquill and Mike Edwards and Charles Omenihu, adding later Mike Pennell on defense, and then the offensive additions. Secondly was the development of this remarkable second-year group, guys that were in their second year. I mentioned this earlier, but 43-0 in the playoffs on defense of the second-year players. That's nuts. and NFL history with the 68 combined starts by first and second year players. That's the most in NFL history. 68 combined starts from first and second year players. You throw in the offensive guys with the defensive guys at 43-0. That's the 43-0 is just the defensive guys. You throw in offensive guys like Pacheco, it's 53-0 of guys in their second year. This is a team that played 21 games, more than any team in franchise history, and only the Cincinnati Bengals played as many, and they didn't win the Super Bowl when they had 21 games in the 2021 season. And then finally, one thing that's been overlooked, I haven't heard of this discussed a lot, was being 8-2 in true road games. They won 8 true road games. A franchise history in only Baltimore, who was 7-1, and San Francisco, who was 7-2 in true road games. And remember, they didn't play any road games in the postseason, were the only two teams that could be even on the same plane. So to me, the infrastructure and what happens here 365 days a year led to this remarkable run in NFL history was made.
That final point makes all the media hoopla about, hey, can Patrick Mahomes go on the road and win a playoff game? Just kind of hilarious, doesn't it? I mean, not only can he go on the road and win a playoff game, he's going to do it in Buffalo, in Baltimore, and then get the Chiefs back to the Super Bowl. But you're right. It's not just Patrick. It's the players around him. And it's a lot of these ancillary pieces that make a really good team a great team. How about McCole Hardman catching the game-winning touchdown? Now, we all know McCole because he was drafted here, he was around here, but McCole was a midseason pickup. McCole was a player that was not on this team in training camp in the first several weeks of the year, and he is the guy that has the ball in his hands when the Chiefs are world champions. Those little things are the things that really add up and matter in the end and push a team to greatness. Justin Watson making so many big plays for the Chiefs over the course of the season and during the playoff run. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who was released yesterday. I mean, just a legendary playoff run for him, making huge plays when it mattered most. Having those players, being able to add those players and to trust them and to put them in big moments. How about Nick Allegretti? Another great example. Nick Allegretti was a 7th-round pick way back in 2019, and he is starting in the Super Bowl because Joe Thuney, the best guard in the NFL, is injured, but no one skips a beat. No one freaks out. No one panics because they trust that they can put this guy in there and he can hold his own against a very good defensive front. We could go on, but it's a real testament to Brett Veach and his staff to find these players who are not maybe household names, but they're in these settings and they can play, they can perform, they can be champions. And Coach Andy Reid and the rest of the coaches on this staff for putting them in the positions to succeed. So I'm totally with you. Patrick, Travis, Chris Jones, those guys, they get a lot of the attention and credit, deservingly so. They're Hall of Famers. They're some of the best players to ever play the game. But to become a champion, those guys would be the first to say they need the other guys on the roster. And our guys really 1 through 53 and even on the practice squad stepped up time and time again this season and in the playoff run.
So the first category is the infrastructure that exists here that will continue after this episode is over, moving into the 2024 season. But it was what was done over a 365-day period, or the off-season of 5 to 6 months, to build a seaworthy ship that would last in rocky seas. And now we know historic rocky seas when you look at what this team was able to accomplish. The second category of our 4, remember that's part of this narrative here, is the number 4 and how it flies into this Super Bowl 58 season, was this incredible defense. The youngest in National Football League history to win a Super Bowl at average age of 25 years, 278 days. The youngest team to win, or youngest defense to win a Super Bowl championship. And it starts with, and we mentioned this throughout the year, but to play 21 games and to allow less than 28 points in every one of those games, considering who they were up against, is amazing.
Can I give you a whole slew of stats here?
Let her rip.
There's
man.
some really great stuff from this playoff run. So I'm going to get to the defense in a moment. I understand that's the point here, but it's all in the context of this. So the Chiefs are one of only 13 teams to play 4 playoff games and win the Super Bowl. You might be like, that's kind of surprising, right? Well, most teams that win the Super Bowl get a bye. And before 2021, there were 2 byes in each conference. So only 13 teams have ever played 4 games and won the Super Bowl. And that's hard because it's another game of work on these guys' bodies. It's difficult. Guys can get hurt. So it doesn't happen very often. Of those 13 teams, the Chiefs are one of only 6 teams to to play the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed in their own conference and the number 1 seed in the other conference and win the Super Bowl. The only other teams to do that are the 2000 Ravens, the 2005 Steelers, the 2007 Giants, the 2011 Giants, and the 2020 Bucks. That last one hurts a little bit. But what do all those teams have in common? Remarkable, legendary playoff runs. Add the Chiefs to that list now. You mentioned the DVOA. That's a very advanced statistic, like analytic kind of thing. According to that, the Chiefs had the hardest postseason run of all time, beating the 2007 Giants, who, of course, beat the previously unbeaten New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. Why am I saying all this? Well, I don't want it to be forgotten in NFL history that, yes, Patrick Mahomes, who is making the case to be the greatest quarterback of all time, is really important and all of that, but so is the Chiefs' defense, because they were legitimately legendary. Like, this should be remembered as an all-time defense, because you mentioned the 28-point figure. The Chiefs held opponents under 25 points in 20 of 21 games this season. The only team to score more than 24 points against the Chiefs this year was the Packers at Lambeau Field. They scored 27. Everyone else was held under 25 points, including the number 2 scoring offense in the NFL in Miami, the number 3 scoring offense in the NFL in San Francisco, the number 4 scoring offense in the NFL in Baltimore, and the number 6 scoring offense in the league in Buffalo. They held those teams to an average of 15.8 points per game in the playoffs. And 2 of those games were on the road. I mean, just unbelievable stuff from this defense. And how about the fourth quarter? So here are the point totals in the fourth quarter for the Chiefs in these games. The Chiefs allowed 0 points to the Dolphins in the fourth quarter, 0 points to Buffalo, 3 to the Ravens, and 9 points to the 49ers in the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter. It's a grand total of 12 points allowed in the fourth quarter. You include overtime, the Niners had a field goal. That's 15 total points in the fourth quarter and overtime during the playoff run. And George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk, 3 of the best players in our game. Those guys combined for 3,254 yards during the season. They combined for 86 yards in the Super Bowl. This defense needs to be remembered as one of the greatest defenses of all time. You can't go any way around it. Like, this is an all-time defense, a championship defense, and one of the very best to ever play the game.
You mentioned the 05 Steelers and the 07 Giants and the 11 Giants and the 2020 Bucks. None of those teams had to play a 17th regular season game against a number 1 team from the NFC. That's what sets this team apart as well, because you think about all that and those runs. The Giants were the only team. They had 7 losses that year. They went 9-7 and still went on that run to beat the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl. The next 4 had 6 losses. That's what I'm saying. There's one of 4 teams with 6 losses. But none of those teams had a 17th game where the Chiefs had to play against a number 1 team from the NFC. In this instance, it was the Eagles, right?
Yeah.
And so it just, again, sets it apart. The final thing I would say as we move on, the second piece of this, 1 was infrastructure, 2, this incredible defense, was you look at the rushing offenses that they played. You talked about scoring offenses. They played in the postseason the number 1 rushing offense in Baltimore, the number 3 in San Francisco, the number 6 in Miami, the number 7 in Buffalo. Christian McCaffrey had an amazing, incredible year, over 2,000 all-purpose yards, nearly 1,500 rushing yards. He averaged 5.6 a carry throughout the year. In Super Bowl 58, he averaged 3.6.
Man,
it's stunning. When you look at Baltimore, just 81 rushing attempts. 81 rushing yards. No, they wish they had 81 rushing attempts. They only had 81 rushing yards. Buffalo, when you look at James Cook, who was 4th in the league, he turned their season around. We talked about that in December, how they adjusted to make it a James Cook-centric offense. And he ran the ball for 3.4 a carry against Kansas City in his home building. And then you look at Miami. Cold weather, minus 28. Wow, that's going to limit their passing game. But it doesn't limit a rushing game. In fact, many people think in a cold weather game like that, rushing attacks have the advantage. Raheem Mostert, who was 10th in the league in rushing, his longest run in that game was 8 yards. And we talked about Devon Achane, explosive player, averaged 7.77 yards a carry when he was healthy in the regular season. His longest run was 3 yards. This defense did remarkable and historic things. Our third category is Patrick Mahomes. And what he did in this playoff run, and he adjusted throughout the season, just it put him on a whole nother pedestal. You alluded to it. What are we going to say about him now? Because it was, hey, he's never played a true road game. He crushed it in those games. Patrick Mahomes went to a whole nother time and space dimension.
He's a legend, and that's just what he is. We're watching history before our eyes. He's just unbelievable. There have been 7 double-digit comebacks in Super Bowl history. Okay, 7 of them. Patrick Mahomes is responsible for 3 of them. I mean, just think about that. The only other double-digit comebacks in NFL Super Bowl history, Washington had one in 1987, the Saints in 2009, the Patriots in 2014, and the Patriots again in 2016. That was the 28-3 game against the Falcons. That's it. Otherwise, it's Patrick Mahomes is the only responsible for the only other double-digit comebacks in Super Bowl history, and he has 3 of them. Just the mental fortitude and the leadership to be down in the Super Bowl not once, not twice, but 3 times, and to lead his team back every single time is the stuff of legends, and you just can't make it up. The Chiefs are 5-1 when trailing by 10 or more points in the playoffs since 2019. The rest of the NFL is 6-48. I mean, that's Patrick Mahomes right there. And I'm glad we talked about the defense first, because the defense put the Chiefs in a position to win the Super Bowl this year. They did. I mean, they contained that 49ers offense in the first half. The 49ers had opportunities to maybe pull away, make it too big of a deficit, and the defense consistently kept the Chiefs within striking distance. And here's the beauty of Patrick Mahomes, is the Chiefs offense, all week you would hear about people saying statistically it's not as explosive as it has been in years past. Well, when all the chips are down and you're in a fourth quarter of a Super Bowl, none of that matters anymore. What matters is that Patrick Mahomes is on our side, and he's not going to lose. The Chiefs scored points on each of their final 4 drives in the Super Bowl. And on the final possession, in overtime, he accounted for 69 of the Chiefs' 75 yards. He went 8 for 8 passing on that drive, also rushed for 27 yards, converted 2 third downs, and 1 fourth down. Won his 3rd Super Bowl MVP. Only Tom Brady has more, with 5, and Patrick is 28 years old. You can't make it up. It's the kind of stuff that if this was like a Disney movie, we'd be like, no, that's not realistic. That's not how things go. Guys don't do this because they don't. We have the one guy that does it. And even if you look back at the early Patriot runs, because Tom Brady is the only person who's really comparable to Patrick at this point. I guess maybe Joe Montana as well. But if you're looking at really these careers, I watched the documentary on the Patriots on Apple TV. It's really good. It's interesting if you love football.
I've yet to watch that yet.
It's good.
I got to get psyched up to watch that one.
But what's interesting is the runs are much different. I mean, I talked about how the Patriots had their run later on, and they had the early run. The run later on was really offense-centric. I mean, Tom Brady was a league MVP. In the early run, it really wasn't like that. I mean, Tom Brady was part of an incredible team, an amazing defense, like all these great players around him, and he was kind of like the point guard of all of that. Patrick Mahomes, to be the best player in the NFL and to win these Super Bowls the way that he has, one of my favorite parts of rewatching the Super Bowl, in overtime, when the Niners are winning, they keep showing Niners' faces on the sideline, like in between plays. And you could feel the sense of dread, the sense of inevitability. And for that to be our quarterback that's putting that feeling into the opponent, it's something you wait your whole life for as a fan. And, I mean, we could talk forever about him, but he's a legend. That's really all I have to say.
To be 15-3 in the postseason in his career shatters all the other records, winning percentage in this. But during the year, Mahomes is having a down year. If you didn't do the deep dive, and we went into all that throughout past episodes, but a 74% completion percentage at Buffalo, at Baltimore, against arguably the NFL's best defense, 77% completion percentage. And his career playoff rating, 105.8 in his career. The runs, the 4th-and-1 run will be the most famous probably in Super Bowl 58. Chiefs don't make that, they lose the game. But we'll forget the 34-yard run at Buffalo, the 22-yard run earlier against San Francisco, the 28-yard run against Miami, the run against Miami where I said on the air, where it was very reminiscent of his Super Bowl 57 run, where he's trying to just take a step without he's in excruciating pain, where he's carrying the ball in one hand and his sword in the other. That's what it reminded you of. And you mentioned the comeback wins. To trail by 7+ points in the playoffs, he's 9-2. All right, the next closest quarterback is Brady at 10-11. Nobody else has a winning record. Like this is just stuff that you cannot make up. 7 straight playoff wins for Patrick Mahomes. Only Brady has more with 10. And then the 2 MVPs and the 3 Super Bowl MVPs ties Joe Montana. So we're there. Is he the greatest? Is he the greatest? Well, he's in the discussion. But right now he's in the discussion. You can narrow it down with maybe only one other guy. Or maybe Montana.
Yeah, maybe Montana.
But that list is getting really – that's those 3, Brady, Montana, and Mahomes, because the others start to dim in what Patrick has already done.
And he's 28. He's on the quarterback Mount Rushmore now. He is.
Yes, sir.
There's no way around it. I mean, I think for so long, understandably so, people want to say, okay, hold on. I think we're just prisoners of the moment. It's recency bias. No. If you win 3 Super Bowls, you are one of the all-time greats already. I don't care how young you are. So I looked this up as well. Here are the only teams in NFL history to win 3 Super Bowls in 5 seasons. The 1974-78 Steelers, the 1992-95 Cowboys, the 01-04 Patriots, and the 14-18 Patriots. Then the Chiefs in this current run. And Mahomes has been the lightning rod behind all of it. He's on the Mount Rushmore of all-time quarterbacks already at 28 years old. And that's why I'm willing to entertain the greatest of all time discussion. Like, I get it. Like, Brady has 7 rings. I understand it. He has a ways to go until he gets there. But when your quarterback is 28 years old, he has been a starter for 6 seasons. His season has never ended shy of overtime of the AFC Championship game. And he's won 3 Super Bowls and been to 4. Again, I mean, this stuff doesn't happen. You kind of have to throw out historical precedent. He's one of the greatest to do it already. I'd be willing to say right now he is the second best quarterback of all time already, and he has a real shot at being the absolute greatest when it's all said and done.
And when you're talking about passing the John Elways and passing the Roethlisbergers, and he's passed them. Sorry, he has. It's just, and he's about ready just to nudge ahead of Montana. And yes, he's on that Mount Rushmore. We'll close it out this way. The 4th category would be the way this team finished. And again, this is stuff we alluded to down through our episodes on defending the kingdom. And let's start with Harrison Butker. I mentioned earlier as we started the podcast, 4 made field goals in the Super Bowl. That ties a Super Bowl record with a couple of others. But he set the Super Bowl record with the 57-yard field goal on the logo, on the paint of the logo in Las Vegas. But what Harrison Butker did this year, and especially the way he finished with the clutch kicks in the playoffs in all kinds of weather. I remember those kicks going into my right in the -28 wind chill game. Harrison Butker set himself apart. Jan, I love Jan Stenerud, Pro Football Hall of Fame. But maybe Butker's headed there.
I know, yeah.
I mean, really, we can't look at this from a historical context until it's done, but in the present, he's headed there.
So Vinatieri is eligible next year, I believe.
He'll get in. First ballot.
And, I mean, Harrison is, like, on that track. Harrison's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He's made field goals in the Super Bowl. He's on the track, and it's hard for kickers to get into the Hall of Fame. We all know that. But, I mean, when you're a 3-time champion, and he's coming off one of the greatest seasons by a kicker ever. It kind of got overshadowed. Like, no one's really talking about it. But if you dig into the numbers, I think he missed 2 field goals this year. He didn't miss a single extra point. He was perfect in the playoffs on field goals and extra points. And, like, major field goals. Think about
and outdoors.
Yeah.
In those 3 playoff runs to get to Las Vegas. Those were not good weather days. None of the 3.
Well, Buffalo really comes to mind because Buffalo was very much like a back-and-forth volley kind of game. And it was a game of who's going to blink first. Yeah. And ultimately, the Bills blinked first. But the Chiefs, they had to match the Bills throughout that game because the Bills had a lot of momentum early. And when a drive maybe would stall a little bit, like on the first drive for the Chiefs, you got to get points. There's nothing more momentum crushing than when you have like a 14-play drive. It stalls on like 4th and 2. It's like, all right, we're in field goal range, and you miss the field goal. Nothing more crushing, especially in the playoffs. That never happened to the Chiefs. Whenever the Chiefs were remotely in field goal range, they got points every single time. And it's actually the inverse effect for the opponent, where they get a stop and they're like, all right, maybe they'll miss the field goal. Maybe we'll get a block. Doesn't happen. And that happened to the 49ers in the Super Bowl. They missed the extra point. It was blocked, and look what happened. So, I mean, you kind of take it for granted when you have a kicker that can go out there and just cash in points every single time. I mean, we can't overlook it. It was one of the greatest seasons by a kicker ever.
The other thing we can overlook, and we'll close it this way, is the issues during the regular season. And we said on this very set, if the Chiefs, and they're all fixable, they'll become a force because there's the infrastructure setting there. The offensive line on the 26th of December took the charge in this area. Drops, okay? Drops. Led the league in drops. Drops are like errors in baseball. You know, some list 43. Next Gen Stats, it's 34. Stats Pass is 35. There were 3 in the playoffs. 3. And 2 by Kelsey, and it was in the minus 28 wind chill game. All right. Penalties, holds. Most holds of any team in the NFL on the offensive side. There were 5 in 4 games. Only 10 penalties in 4 games on the Chiefs. Third was the giveaway takeaway. Minus 11 in the regular season. That doesn't add up to 11-6. But being plus 2 against 4 really tough opponents adds up to a Super Bowl championship. They cleaned it up when it mattered the most.
It's the heart of a champion. That's what it is. And I understand why people were questioning the Chiefs during the season. I get it. It's hard to flip the switch, right? Hard to correct those things when it matters most. The Chiefs have the benefit of the experience of being there. They know what it takes. And listen, like, I want the Chiefs to win every game. Like when we lost to the Bills, that was a bummer. Like, you want to beat the Bills. I wanted to beat the Eagles at home. Like, those are bummers, and the players feel that more than anyone. But it really is a matter of what do you do from there? How do you take it? How do you respond to a really tough loss to the Raiders at home on Christmas? This is stuff we talked about all year, and it might sound like we're just being like captain positive after a tough loss, but if you want to win a Super Bowl and a championship, that's how you have to handle it. You have to respond to it by learning from it and correcting it. And, okay, what can I take from this to use to make me better? Not dwelling on it and pointing fingers. That's what teams that lose do, and the Chiefs don't do that. And there was many times this year, like flashpoints is what you call them. That's what they are, where the Chiefs could have been like, it is not our year. Like, this is just not our year. We'll retool, we'll regroup, get them next year. The Chiefs didn't do that. The Chiefs said, this is our team that we're going to win with. And I think about McCole Hardman, like, to get back to McCole, a player that had ups and downs, wasn't going well in New York, and he comes here and he's injured. But then when his number is called in the biggest moment of his life, he comes through. Like, that's the DNA of this team and what it's like to be here. And not to go on a tangent on McCole, but I was happy for him because so often it felt like McCole made big plays before the play everyone remembers, you know?
Throughout his career, we laid that out, especially in the playoffs.
Like against the Texans, the kick return. No one really remembers that unless you're like really nitty-gritty into it. They just remember all the touchdowns. It all started with him. In the 13 seconds game, he had like a 25-yard catch and run right before the play that Kels caught the touchdown that everyone remembers. Well, McCole finally had his play where everyone is going to remember it forever. I think that's so cool, and he deserves it. And he's an example of what it means to be a champion in this building. Like, things aren't going well. You know, like, I could pack it all in or I can get to work. It's not a cliche. It's not just coach speak. That's real. And the Chiefs embraced that throughout this season. And what do you know? Paid off with a second straight championship.
Especially the fumble against Buffalo, where you're thinking, God, we'd be up double digits. That's a double-digit game. And you're thinking, no, McColl's going to be the GOAT. But Andy Reid, that's the brilliance of Andy Reid, is understanding the human spirit. It's even better than anything he can design as a play. And then Hardman comes out to will be there forever. So, yes, the 64th team in franchise history is a team that is truly set apart. They will be in our hearts and our souls as long as we have breath on this in this earth. But it's also a team that was, 4 was a big number for this team. The 64th team, set apart and remembered forever.